In a distant corner of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of human eyes, there existed an extraordinary school unlike any other. This was no ordinary academy. It was called the Galactic Institute for Universal Learning, GUL. It stood on a shimmering planet made entirely of crystal, its towers glowing softly under twin suns. Students from countless species gathered here to learn about the mysteries of the universe. Among these students were Zix and Lyra, two beings as different from each other as they were from humans. Zix was a tall, blue-skinned creature with 3 arms that ended in delicate fingers, perfect for intricate tasks like solving math problems or tinkering with machinery. His large, round eyes sparkled with curiosity, though he often felt nervous around new experiences. Lyra, on the other hand, wasn't even solid. She was a floating orb of light that changed colors depending on her mood. When she was happy, she glowed warm shades of yellow and orange. When confused or worried, she flickered in cool blues and purples. Despite their differences, both Zix and Lyra shared one thing in common. They had heard stories about humans. Humans were strange creatures who lived on a small blue-green planet called Earth. They weren't particularly strong compared to some alien races, nor were they especially intelligent by galactic standards. Yet rumors about them spread faster than warp-speed ships. Some said humans could destroy entire ecosystems just by stepping foot on them. Others whispered that human children possessed some sort of mysterious power over even the most advanced civilizations. No one knew exactly what made humans so feared, but everyone agreed. They were unpredictable. One day, Professor Zarn entered the grand lecture hall where Zix and Lyra sat among dozens of other students. Professor Zarn was a towering insectoid, with iridescent wings that shimmered like oil slicks. His antennae twitched constantly, sensing the emotions of his students before they spoke. Today, however, his voice buzzed with excitement rather than sternness. "Students," he began, "this semester, you will study humanity." The room erupted into murmurs. Humanity? Those chaotic mammals? Zix raised one of his hands hesitantly. "Professor," he asked, "why are we studying such dangerous beings?" Zarn's antennae twitched again, and a faint smile crossed his mandibles. "Because understanding fear is as important as overcoming it," he replied. "You'll see soon enough." The announcement left Zix feeling uneasy. He had always preferred predictable subjects like mathematics or engineering. Humans sounded messy, uncontrollable, and frankly, terrifying. Lyra, meanwhile, pulsed softly with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. She had never met a human before, but the idea of encountering something so enigmatic intrigued her. A few days later, the students received their first assignment: observe human children without being detected. Using advanced technology, they would disguise themselves as everyday objects, a backpack, a lamp, a toy, and blend seamlessly into Earth's environment. Zix found himself transformed into a sleek silver lunchbox, while Lyra became a glowing nightlight plugged into the wall of a child's bedroom. Neither of them knew what to expect. Zix materialized inside a bustling classroom filled with rowdy kids scribbling on paper and shouting answers at their teacher. At first, he was overwhelmed by the noise and chaos. Children ran around, bumped into desks, and argued loudly over whose turn it was to use the pencil sharpener. But as he watched more closely, Zix noticed something surprising. Despite the apparent disorder, the children seemed to work together surprisingly well. When one boy dropped his book, another picked it up without hesitation. During group activities, they formed alliances and solved problems almost instinctively. Zix tilted slightly, trying to process what he was seeing. Was this teamwork or something else? Meanwhile, Lyra floated quietly in a young girl's bedroom. The girl, named Mia, was about 10 years old with freckles scattered across her nose and curly brown hair tied back in a ponytail. At first glance, Mia didn't seem remarkable. She wasn't particularly loud or boisterous, and she spent much of her time drawing pictures or reading books. But as Lyra observed her more closely, she began to notice something extraordinary. Mia radiated energy, not physical strength, but a kind of mental vitality. She solved puzzles quickly, adapted to changes in her routine effortlessly, and created entire worlds within her imagination. One evening, after finishing her homework, Mia sat cross-legged on her bed and started building a spaceship out of cardboard boxes. She hummed to herself as she worked, completely absorbed in her project. Watching her, Lyra couldn't help but glow brighter with admiration. Back at Guile, the students gathered to share their observations. Zix recounted tales of arguments breaking out during math lessons only for friendships to form moments later during recess. "It's like they're constantly shifting between conflict and cooperation," he said, scratching his head with one of his extra arms. Lyra described how quickly human children adapted to new situations, turning obstacles into opportunities. "Mia built a spaceship out of trash," she exclaimed, her light pulsing enthusiastically. "She didn't wait for instructions or materials. She just did it." Despite their fascinating discoveries, none of the students could answer the question posed by Professor Zarn. Why were humans feared across the galaxy? Everything they had seen so far seemed normal, even inspiring. Frustrated, Professor Zarn decided to take matters into his own hands. "Tomorrow," he announced, "you will interact directly with human children. Only then will you truly understand." That night, Zix lay awake in his dormitory, staring at the ceiling. He couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental awaited him on Earth. Lyra floated nearby, her glow flickering softly as she processed everything she had learned. Both of them felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. What would happen when they stepped out of the shadows and revealed themselves to the very beings they had been sent to study? Little did they know their journey was just beginning. Over the next few weeks, they would come face to face with the unpredictable nature of humanity and discover truths about themselves that would change their lives forever. For now, though, all they could do was wait, wondering what tomorrow would bring. The next morning, Zix and Lyra found themselves standing, or rather hovering, at the edge of a playground on Earth. They had been given temporary disguises that allowed them to appear human-like enough to blend in, but still retain some of their alien features. Zix's 3 arms were cleverly hidden beneath a long-sleeved jacket, though his blue skin remained visible. Lyra, meanwhile, had taken on the form of a glowing orb encased in a translucent shell, resembling a high-tech toy. Both of them felt nervous as they watched the chaotic scene unfold before them. Children ran everywhere, shouting and laughing, their energy seemingly boundless. Some chased each other around, while others climbed monkey bars or swung on swings. A group of kids huddled near a sandbox, building elaborate castles out of sand and arguing over who got to be king. It was overwhelming, yet oddly captivating. Zix glanced at Lyra, whose light pulsed softly with curiosity. Neither of them had ever seen anything like this. Professor Zarn's instructions echoed in their minds. Interact directly with the children. But how? Humans were unpredictable, and Zix worried about saying or doing the wrong thing. Lyra, however, seemed more confident. Her glow brightened as she floated toward a cluster of children playing tag. One of them, a boy with messy blonde hair and dirt-smudged knees, noticed her immediately. "Whoa, what's that?" he exclaimed, pointing at Lyra. Before anyone could answer, another child, a girl with braids and a mischievous grin, rushed over. "Is it a robot? Can I touch it?" Lyra hesitated for a moment, then bobbed up and down, mimicking a nod. The girl reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing against Lyra's smooth surface. To everyone's surprise, Lyra emitted a soft hum and changed colors, shifting from blue to green to gold. The children gasped in awe. "It's alive," one of them whispered. "No way," said the boy with messy hair. "It's got to be a toy." Zix watched nervously from the sidelines, unsure whether to intervene. He didn't have much time to think, though, because moments later, a freckled girl named Mia approached him. She was the same girl Lyra had observed earlier, the one who built spaceships out of cardboard boxes. Now she stood staring at Zix with wide, curious eyes. "Why are you blue?" she asked bluntly. Zix froze. His first instinct was to run away, but something about Mia's directness made him pause. Taking a deep breath, he replied, I come from far away. Very far." Mia tilted her head, considering this. "Like space far?" Yes, Zix said, relieved that she hadn't screamed or called for help. From another planet. Instead of looking scared, Mia's face lit up with excitement. No way, are you an alien? Well, yes, Zix admitted, bracing himself for her reaction. That is so cool, Mia exclaimed, clapping her hands together. Do you have superpowers? Can you fly? Do aliens even sleep? Wait, do you eat food? Oh my gosh, what's your name? Her rapid-fire questions caught Zix off guard, but he couldn't help smiling. For someone supposedly feared across the galaxy, Mia seemed remarkably friendly. He introduced himself and answered her questions as best he could, though he struggled to keep up with her endless curiosity. Meanwhile, Lyra had become the center of attention among the other children. They surrounded her, peppering her with questions and trying to figure out how she worked. When one child suggested tossing her into the air to see if she would float, Lyra emitted a playful pulse of light and zoomed upward, hovering just out of reach. The kids erupted into laughter, cheering as she darted back and forth like a firefly. Even the shyest children joined in, their initial fear melting away as they realized Lyra wasn't dangerous, just fun. As the hours passed, Zix and Lyra grew more comfortable interacting with the children. Zix discovered that humans weren't as scary as he'd imagined. In fact, they were surprisingly easy to talk to once you got past their loudness. He marveled at how quickly they adapted to new situations. When a soccer ball rolled into a muddy puddle, ruining the game, Mia immediately suggested turning it into a splashing contest instead. Within minutes, half the kids were jumping into the puddle, shrieking with delight. Lyra, too, found herself charmed by the children's creativity. One boy used sticks and leaves to create a makeshift crown for her, declaring her the Queen of Light. Another child drew pictures of her in the dirt, adding stars and planets around her glowing form. Despite their differences, the children treated her not as an outsider but as part of their group. By the end of the day, both Zix and Lyra felt exhausted, but exhilarated. There was something undeniably magnetic about human children, their boundless energy, their ability to turn obstacles into opportunities, their sheer unpredictability. It all added up to something extraordinary. Yet, neither Zix nor Lyra could quite put their finger or light on why humans were feared across the galaxy. They returned to Geel that evening with more questions than answers. Back at the Institute, the students gathered in the lecture hall to share their experiences. Professor Zarn listened intently as Zix recounted his conversation with Mia. She wasn't afraid of me, Zix said, still sounding amazed. In fact, she wanted to know everything about me. She asked if I ate food, if I slept, if I had superpowers. And, did you tell her? Professor Zarn asked, his antennae twitching with amusement. I told her I don't need to eat or sleep, Zix replied. But when she asked about superpowers, I kind of lied and said I could count really fast. The room erupted into laughter and even Professor Zarn chuckled. A useful skill nonetheless, he said dryly. Next, it was Lyra's turn to speak. Using a combination of glowing patterns and translated speech, she described how the children had played with her, treating her like a friend rather than a threat. They weren't scared of me, she concluded. They were curious, excited even. Professor Zarn nodded thoughtfully. And yet, he said, the rest of the galaxy fears them. Why do you think that is? The students fell silent, pondering the question. Zix scratched his head with one of his hidden arms. Maybe it's because they're so unpredictable, he ventured. You never know what they'll do next. Lyra chimed in, her light flickering thoughtfully. Or maybe it's because they're capable of so much. They can destroy things, but they can also create amazing things. Professor Zarn smiled faintly. Both are true, he said. Humans embody potential, both destructive and creative. Their unpredictability makes them terrifying to those who value order above all else, but it's also what makes them fascinating. The professor paused, letting his words sink in. Tomorrow, he continued, you will work alongside these children. You will collaborate with them on projects that require imagination, teamwork, and problem-solving. Only then will you begin to understand why humanity is both feared and admired. That night, Zix and Lyra lay awake, thinking about what Professor Zarn had said. Zix couldn't stop picturing Mia's excited face as she peppered him with questions. Lyra replayed the memory of the children crowning her Queen of Light in her mind, her glow pulsing softly with warmth. Both of them felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension about the next day's assignment. Would they be able to keep up with the humans' boundless creativity? And more importantly, would they finally uncover the truth behind humanity's reputation? Little did they know, their journey was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would challenge everything they thought they knew about fear, courage, and the power of imagination. The next morning, Zix and Lyra arrived back on Earth, this time prepared for collaboration rather than observation. They had been assigned to work directly with human children on creative projects designed to showcase both their unique abilities and the unpredictable nature of humanity. Professor Zarn's instructions were clear. Learn from them as much as you teach them. With a mix of excitement and nervousness, the two aliens stepped into a brightly lit community center where rows of tables were set up with art supplies, tools, and technology kits. Zix found himself paired with Mia, the freckled girl who had questioned him about being an alien the day before. She greeted him with a wide grin, holding up a cardboard box that looked suspiciously like the beginnings of another spaceship. "I'm building a gravity-defying sculpture," she announced proudly. "Want to help?" Zix blinked in confusion. "Gravity-defy what?" Mia rolled her eyes playfully. "It means it won't fall apart when we turn it upside down. We're gonna make it float." Though skeptical, Zix nodded and joined her at the table. Together, they began assembling the structure using scraps of metal, string, and duct tape. As they worked, Mia explained her vision in bursts of enthusiasm, often changing her mind mid-sentence. At one point, she decided the ship needed wings made out of aluminum foil. Moments later, she scrapped the idea entirely and opted for propellers instead. Zix marveled at how quickly she adapted, never discouraged by setbacks or mistakes. When the frame collapsed under its own weight, Mia simply laughed and said, "Okay, plan B." Meanwhile, Lyra floated nearby, working with a shy boy named Ethan. Unlike Mia, Ethan was quiet and reserved, preferring to observe rather than take charge. He sat hunched over a tablet, typing lines of code for a holographic game he wanted to create. The concept was ambitious, a virtual world where players could experience emotions through immersive storytelling. But Ethan struggled to bring his ideas to life. Frustrated, he sighed and leaned back in his chair. Lyra pulsed softly, sensing his frustration. Hovering closer, she emitted a series of calming colors, soft blues and greens to encourage him. Ethan noticed and smiled faintly. "You're pretty cool, you know that?" he said quietly. Encouraged by her presence, he returned to his project, explaining his vision to her as if she were an old friend. Lyra listened intently, her glow shifting in response to his words. Over the course of the day, the room buzzed with activity. Children teamed up with alien students, combining their skills to tackle challenges that ranged from engineering puzzles to artistic endeavors. One group, led by a confident girl named Ava, constructed a miniature city powered entirely by solar panels. Another team created a musical instrument using recycled materials, producing eerie yet beautiful sounds. Everywhere Zix and Lyra looked, humans demonstrated their boundless creativity and resourcefulness. As Zix helped Mia attach wires to her sculpture, he couldn't help but feel inspired. Her determination reminded him of something Professor Zarn had said: "Humans embody potential, both destructive and creative." Watching Mia transform random scraps into a functional piece of art, Zix realized just how powerful that potential could be. It wasn't just about building something. It was about imagining possibilities no one else dared to consider. At one point, Mia turned to Zix and asked, "Do you think aliens ever get scared of trying new things?" Zix hesitated, taken aback by the question. "Sometimes," he admitted. "We like rules and patterns because they feel safe." Mia frowned thoughtfully. "But isn't it more fun to break the rules sometimes? Like What if you tried painting with your feet instead of your hands? Or built a house upside down? Zix chuckled nervously. Painting with my feet sounds messy. Exactly, Mia exclaimed, throwing her arms in the air. Messy is good. Messy means you're learning. Her words stuck with Zix long after they finished their project. By the end of the day, Mia's gravity-defying sculpture stood tall, or rather, floated gently above the ground thanks to a clever system of magnets and counterweights. Though far from perfect, it was undeniably impressive. As the other children gathered around to admire it, Mia beamed with pride. See? I told you it would work. On the other side of the room, Ethan finally completed his holographic game. With Lyra's encouragement, he added a feature that allowed players to see the world through the eyes of different creatures, including aliens. When he presented the game to the group, everyone cheered, especially Lyra, whose glow burst into a dazzling display of rainbow hues. Ethan blushed but grinned widely, clearly proud of what he had accomplished. That evening, back at Geel, the students gathered once again to reflect on their experiences. Zix spoke first, describing how Mia's relentless optimism had pushed him out of his comfort zone. She kept coming up with wild ideas, even when things didn't go as planned, he said. And somehow everything still worked out in the end. Lyra followed, sharing how Ethan's quiet determination had taught her the value of patience and persistence. He didn't give up, even when he felt stuck, she explained, her light flickering warmly. And in the end, he created something truly amazing. Professor Zarn listened intently, nodding approvingly. What did you learn about fear today? He asked. The students hesitated, unsure how to answer. Finally, Zix ventured. Maybe fear comes from not understanding. Humans are unpredictable, but that doesn't mean they're dangerous. Sometimes unpredictability can lead to great things. Lyra agreed, adding, humans aren't afraid to fail. They try new things even if they don't know if they'll succeed. That's why they're so inspiring. Professor Zarn smiled faintly. Precisely. Humanity's greatest strength and its greatest weakness is its ability to embrace uncertainty. To others, that makes them seem chaotic, even threatening. But to those willing to understand, it reveals their true power, the power to imagine, adapt, and create. The professor paused, letting his words sink in. For your final task, he continued, you will present your findings to the entire institute. Share what you've learned, not just about humans, but about yourselves. Remember, the goal of this assignment is not only to study humanity, but to grow from the experience. That night, Zix and Lyra lay awake, reflecting on everything they had witnessed. Zix thought about Mia's fearless creativity and how it had challenged him to think differently. Lyra replayed Ethan's quiet perseverance in her mind, marveling at how much she had learned from someone so different from herself. Both of them felt a deep sense of gratitude for the humans they had met and for the lessons they had taken away. The next day, the students prepared for their presentations. Zix practiced explaining Mia's gravity-defying sculpture, emphasizing the importance of embracing failure as part of the creative process. Lyra rehearsed her glowing patterns, translating Ethan's story into a visual narrative of resilience and innovation. Each student brought something unique to the table, united by their shared understanding of humanity's dual nature. When the time came, the lecture hall filled with anticipation. Zix stood before the assembly, his voice steady despite his nerves. Humans are not feared because they are evil, he began. They are feared because they remind us of our own limitations. They challenge us to grow, to adapt, to embrace uncertainty. Lyra followed, her light pulsing in sync with her words. Through collaboration, we discovered that humans are not just creators or destroyers. They are dreamers. Their imaginations have the power to reshape reality itself. The audience erupted into applause, moved by the depth of insight the students had gained. Even Professor Zarn looked pleased, his antennae twitching with pride. For the first time, many of the alien students saw humanity not as a threat, but as a source of inspiration. As the semester drew to a close, Zix and Lyra returned to their respective planets carrying with them more than knowledge. They carried hope. Zix became an advocate for creative problem-solving among his people, encouraging them to experiment fearlessly. Lyra used her glowing presence to spread messages of unity across star systems, reminding everyone that diversity was strength. Years later, when rumors of humanity's influence reached far-off galaxies, few shuddered in fear. Instead, many smiled, remembering the lesson imparted by two curious aliens and a group of fearless human children. Sometimes, the things we fear most are the very things that can teach us to be better. The day of the final presentation arrived, and the atmosphere at the Galactic Institute for Universal Learning, GEOL, was electric with anticipation. Students from across the galaxy had gathered in the grand lecture hall, their varied forms creating a surreal mosaic of colors, shapes, and textures. Some floated silently above the ground, while others shuffled nervously on multiple legs or tentacles. Zix sat near the front, his 3 arms twitching as he rehearsed his speech under his breath. Beside him, Lyra pulsed softly, her light flickering, between shades of yellow and orange, nervous but determined. Professor Zarn stood at the podium, his iridescent wings shimmering under the soft glow of the crystal ceiling. "Today," he buzzed, addressing the assembly, "you will present your findings on humanity. Remember, this is not just an academic exercise. It is an opportunity to share what you have learned about yourselves." As the first student stepped forward, Zix felt his heart, or whatever passed for one, pounding in his chest. He glanced at Lyra, who responded with a reassuring pulse of calming blue light. They had worked so hard to understand humans, yet, now that the moment had come, Zix couldn't shake the feeling that words might fail him. How could he possibly capture the essence of Mia's boundless creativity or Ethan's quiet determination? When it was finally Zix's turn, he rose slowly, his long limbs trembling slightly. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. Taking a deep breath, he began, "Humans are unpredictable." He paused, searching for the right words. "At first I thought unpredictability was dangerous. I thought it meant chaos, disorder, something to be feared. But then I met Mia." Zix went on to describe his time with Mia, the gravity-defying sculpture, her endless stream of ideas, and her ability to laugh off failure. "Mia didn't care if things went wrong," he said. "She saw every mistake as a chance to try again, to learn, to grow. She taught me that uncertainty isn't something to fear. It's something to embrace. Humans don't wait for perfection before they act. They dive in, make mistakes, and figure it out along the way." His voice grew stronger as he spoke, his confidence building. "And that's why they're feared," he continued. "Not because they're evil, but because they remind us of our own limitations. They challenge us to step outside our comfort zones, to imagine possibilities we never thought possible. To others, that might seem chaotic. But to me, it feels inspiring." The audience erupted into applause, their cheers echoing through the hall. Zix stepped back, his face flushed with pride. For the first time, he realized how much he had changed during this assignment. Before, he had been hesitant, cautious, even fearful of anything unfamiliar. Now, thanks to Mia, he understood that growth came from taking risks, even when those risks felt uncomfortable. Next, it was Lyra's turn. She floated gracefully to the center of the stage, her light shifting into a warm golden hue. Without speaking, she began to communicate through a series of glowing patterns and symbols projected onto the walls of the lecture hall. Images of Ethan working on his holographic game appeared, accompanied by swirling colors that conveyed emotions: frustration, perseverance, triumph. Then, Lyra's light shifted to depict scenes from her interactions with the other children. The boy who crowned her Queen of Light, the girl who drew pictures of her in the dirt, and the group of kids who chased her around the playground. Each image radiated warmth and connection, showing how quickly fear had transformed into friendship. Finally, Lyra's glow settled into a steady rhythm of blues and greens as she translated her thoughts into universal symbols. "Humans are dreamers," she concluded. "They imagine worlds beyond their own and find ways to bring those worlds to life. Their creativity knows no bounds, and neither does their capacity for empathy. When we worked together, I learned that collaboration isn't about finding perfection. It's about embracing imperfection and building something greater than ourselves. The audience erupted once again, this time with cheers and flashes of light from various alien species expressing admiration and gratitude. Even Professor Zarn looked deeply moved, his antennae twitching with approval. As Lyra floated back to her seat, Zix gave her a thumbs up with one of his extra arms, eliciting a playful burst of rainbow-colored light in response. After all the presentations were complete, Professor Zarn took the stage one last time. "You have done well," he said, his voice buzzing with pride. "Each of you has uncovered a piece of the puzzle that is humanity. You have seen their flaws, their impulsiveness, their recklessness, but you have also witnessed their strengths, their resilience, their imagination, their ability to connect across differences." He paused, letting his words sink in. Fear often stems from misunderstanding. It thrives in ignorance and fades in the light of knowledge. By studying humanity, you have not only learned about them, you have learned about yourselves. You have discovered your own fears, your own limitations, and most importantly, your own potential. The professor's antennae twitched as he added, "Take these lessons with you as you return to your home planets. Share what you have learned and remember, the universe is vast, and there is always more to discover. Humanity may be unpredictable, but so are you. Embrace that unpredictability and let it guide you toward growth and understanding." The students left the lecture hall feeling inspired, their minds buzzing with new ideas and perspectives. Zix and Lyra lingered behind, watching as their classmates dispersed in groups, chatting excitedly about their experiences. Both of them knew that this assignment had changed them in ways they couldn't fully articulate. Later that evening, Zix and Lyra sat together on the edge of the Institute's crystalline balcony, gazing out at the twin suns setting over the horizon. The sky glowed in hues of pink and purple, casting a soft light over the landscape. Zix sighed contentedly, leaning back on his hands. "Do you think anyone will believe us when we tell them about humans?" he asked. Lyra pulsed softly, her light shifting to a thoughtful shade of lavender. "Maybe not at first," she replied, "but if we show them what we've learned, if we share our stories, they might start to see humans differently. Not as threats, but as teachers." Zix nodded, smiling faintly. "I used to think humans were scary because they were unpredictable. Now I realize that unpredictability is what makes them amazing. It's what makes all of us amazing." For a while, neither of them spoke, simply enjoying the peaceful moment. Then Lyra broke the silence. "What do you think we'll do next?" Zix shrugged, his extra arms waving lazily in the air. "I don't know. Maybe I'll start experimenting. Try things I've never done before. What about you?" Lyra's glow brightened, shifting to a hopeful shade of gold. "I want to travel, to visit other planets and meet more beings like humans. There's so much to learn, so much to explore." They sat in companionable silence for a little longer before heading inside to pack their belongings. Tomorrow they would leave Gyul and return to their respective homes, carrying with them the lessons they had learned about humanity and themselves. Back on Zix's home planet, he became an advocate for creative problem-solving among his people. Using the principles he had learned from Mia, he encouraged his community to experiment fearlessly, even if it meant making mistakes along the way. His efforts sparked a wave of innovation, leading to breakthroughs in technology and art that transformed his society. Meanwhile, Lyra traveled across star systems, spreading messages of unity and collaboration. Her glowing presence became a symbol of hope, reminding everyone she encountered that diversity was strength. She often recounted her experiences with Ethan and the other children, emphasizing the importance of perseverance and imagination. Years later, when rumors of humanity's influence reached far-off galaxies, few shuddered in fear. Instead, many smiled, remembering the lesson imparted by two curious aliens and a group of fearless human children. Sometimes, the things we fear most are the very things that can teach us to be better. And as Zix and Lyra looked up at the stars, They knew they had played a small part in bridging the gap between worlds, one act of understanding at a time. When Zix and Lyra returned to their respective planets, they carried more than just memories of their time on Earth. They carried a renewed sense of purpose. Their experiences with human children had ignited something within them, a desire to share what they had learned and inspire change in their own worlds. What began as an assignment at the Galactic Institute for Universal Learning, GIUL, soon grew into a lifelong mission for both aliens, one that would ripple across galaxies and leave an indelible mark on countless lives. Zix's home planet was a structured society where order reigned supreme. Its inhabitants prided themselves on precision, efficiency, and adherence to rules. Creativity was often viewed as unnecessary, or worse, disruptive. But after working alongside Mia and witnessing her fearless approach to problem-solving, Zix couldn't help but question his people's rigid ways. He remembered how Mia had laughed off failure, turning mistakes into opportunities, and he wondered, could his planet benefit from embracing a little chaos? Determined to make a difference, Zix began organizing workshops in his community. At first, his ideas were met with skepticism. Why waste time on experiments when we already know what works? One elder asked during his first presentation. Zix didn't argue. Instead, he demonstrated, using materials he'd brought back from Earth, scraps of cardboard, wires, and duct tape. He challenged participants to build something without clear instructions. Some grumbled, others hesitated, but eventually everyone joined in. The results were surprising. A group of engineers created a collapsible bridge using leftover metal rods and fabric. Artists designed murals out of discarded objects, transforming dull walls into vibrant masterpieces. Even scientists who typically avoided anything outside their field found joy in tinkering with unfamiliar tools. Slowly but surely, Zix's workshops sparked a cultural shift. People began to see creativity not as a threat to order, but as a complement to it. Failure became less feared, and experimentation flourished. Word of Zix's efforts spread quickly, reaching even the highest levels of government. One day, he received an invitation to speak before the Council of Elders, a governing body known for its resistance to change. Standing before them, Zix recounted his journey on Earth and shared stories of Mia's gravity-defying sculpture. Humans aren't afraid to fail, he said, and because of that they achieve incredible things. Maybe it's time we stopped fearing failure too. To his amazement, the council listened and agreed. They approved funding for innovation hubs across the planet, spaces where citizens could explore new ideas without judgment. Over time, these hubs led to breakthroughs in technology, medicine, and art. Zix's once stagnant world transformed into a thriving hub of creativity and progress. And though he never sought recognition, many credited him with sparking the change. Meanwhile, Lyra traveled far beyond her luminous homeworld, spreading messages of unity and collaboration wherever she went. Her glowing presence made her an instant ambassador, drawing crowds eager to hear her stories of Earth. She told tales of Ethan's holographic game, which allowed players to experience emotions through immersive storytelling, and of the children who crowned her Queen of Light. Each story emphasized the power of connection, reminding listeners that differences should be celebrated, not feared. One of Lyra's most impactful visits was to a divided planet called Vera. The inhabitants of Vera were split into two factions, each convinced of their superiority over the other. Tensions ran high and violence often erupted in border regions. When Lyra arrived, she was greeted with suspicion. "Why should we trust you?" demanded a leader from one faction. "You're just a floating light," Lyra pulsed softly, her glow shifting to a calming blue. Without speaking, she projected images of her time on Earth, children of all shapes, sizes, and backgrounds working together seamlessly despite their differences. She showed scenes of Mia and Ethan collaborating, of kids playing tag and laughing, of hands reaching out to help one another. Then she translated her thoughts into universal symbols. Unity is strength. Diversity is beauty. Her message resonated deeply. Leaders from both factions agreed to meet under Lyra's guidance, marking the first step toward reconciliation. Inspired by her example, they established joint projects aimed at fostering cooperation between their peoples. Within months, hostilities began to wane, replaced by tentative friendships and shared goals. By the time Lyra departed, Vera was no longer a planet divided. It was a beacon of hope in the galaxy. As years passed, Zix and Lyra continued their work, each influencing countless lives in their own way. Zix remained on his planet, nurturing a culture of creativity and experimentation. His workshops evolved into global festivals celebrating innovation, attended by beings from across the galaxy. Lyra, ever the wanderer, visited dozens of planets, leaving behind trails of inspiration wherever she went. Her journeys took her to war-torn worlds, isolated colonies, and thriving civilizations alike, each encounter reinforcing her belief in the power of empathy and imagination. Despite their different paths, Zix and Lyra stayed in touch, exchanging updates through interstellar communication devices. Occasionally, they reunited at Giyul for alumni gatherings, reminiscing about their days studying humanity. During one such reunion, they found themselves seated near Professor Zarn, now retired, but still buzzing with wisdom. "You've done well," Zarn said, his antennae twitching with pride. "Tell me, do you think humanity still fears itself?" Zix and Lyra exchanged a glance before answering. "Sometimes," Zix admitted, "but humans also have a way of overcoming that fear. They keep pushing forward, even when the odds are against them. And sometimes," Lyra added, her light pulsing warmly, "they remind us that fear isn't always bad. It can be a catalyst for growth, if we let it." Zarn nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all. Fear exists, but so does courage. The choice is ours." Their conversation lingered long after the gathering ended, echoing in the minds of those who heard it. Back on Earth, unbeknownst to Zix and Lyra, Mia and Ethan had grown up to become influential figures in their own right. Mia pursued a career in engineering, designing sustainable cities powered entirely by renewable energy. Ethan became a renowned game developer, creating virtual worlds that promoted understanding and compassion. Neither of them ever forgot the Mbiri aliens they had met as children, the glowing orb and the blue-skinned being who had believed in them when they doubted themselves. Years later, rumors of humanity's influence reached distant corners of the galaxy. Stories of their ingenuity, resilience, and capacity for connection inspired countless species to embrace their own potential. No longer seen solely as unpredictable or dangerous, humans came to represent hope, a reminder that even in the face of uncertainty, greatness could emerge. For Zix and Lyra, this was the ultimate reward. They had set out to study humanity, only to discover truths about themselves and their place in the universe. Through their interactions with human children, they had learned that fear wasn't something to be conquered, it was something to be understood. And in understanding fear, they had found courage. As Zix looked up at the stars one night, he smiled, imagining Mia gazing at the same sky. Across the galaxy, Lyra floated peacefully, her light glowing brighter than ever. Both knew their journeys were far from over, but they faced the future with confidence. After all, they had seen firsthand what humanity and the rest of the galaxy was capable of achieving when given the chance. And so, the legacy of two curious aliens and a group of fearless human children lived on, reminding everyone who heard their story of a simple yet profound truth. Sometimes the things we fear most are the very things that can teach us to be better.